Welcome back, Authentikit fans. This is what we are building today. It is a Spitfire Mark 9 throttle quadrant, available as part of the Spitfire Mark 9 add-on Kit B from the Authentikit website. Just a minute, you say? We've already got that. Oh, really? Oh, well, I do have a sneak preview of the Mustang P51 pedestal in the flesh at the end of this video. But seriously, I have to say, what I'm now holding is much better than the Mark 9 throttle you have, and I'll tell you why. Authentikit is a freeware project. We're creating flight controls for a wide range of aircraft with an initial focus on vintage warbirds, followed by vintage and classic general aviation. We're harnessing the power of 3D printing in conjunction with high quality but low cost components like Hall sensors and sealed bearings. All flight controls can be assembled at your kitchen table with no workshop tools, no soldering and no metal work. You can source the parts yourself, or third parties are providing kits of all the hardware as well as 3D printed parts. First, it has hydraulic damping. Pioneered in the P40B quadrant, this has a really nice sense of mechanical resistance as you move the lever. Second, the War Emergency Power detent. It's much improved. There was a step here in the earlier one, and it kind of gave a nod. I'll pull that back there. Round about here was the step, and it kind of gave a nod to the appearance of the real thing, but it didn't feel anything like it. This version, it's got a ball spring plunger detent built in, so you get this nice sort of locking feeling as you reach the wet position, and then you push past it and reach War Emergency Power mode. Thirdly, this prop lever, the RPM air screw control, much improved, stronger. I'll explain why during the video. And finally, the bomb release button. After I developed the clinch button for the Mark 1 stick, it had this really nice sense of resistance and then travel. And it always bugged me that the Mark 9 bomb release, which is kind of the first version I did, it was really a lot inferior. It was based on a kind of just spongy neoprene thing. So now I'm standardizing on that clinch button design, and I've put it in this quadrant, and it's much better. If you already have the old quadrant, don't worry, you don't need to print everything again. About 2/3 of the parts are unchanged. Now, I expect that many of you are rushing to download and print these new files, so I need to tell you about another new development. I have finally launched a proper download file sharing system, which is much more flexible. It's got the capability for community submitted mods like Tentpeg's nav lights and Cavaris's combined rudder and elevator trim wheel unit. Those community mods are something I hope to have running soon, but for now I've moved all the files from the Authentikit website to this new download system, and the address is download.authentikit.org, although it's linked to from the main website. And this is what it looks like. One thing I hope you'll like is that you can provide feedback to others on what you think of each control, as well as give reviews. And as we get more and more controls, especially made by third parties, I think this will be very useful. In fact, I'd really encourage it. These files are all free, and even if you don't contribute to a development at some point yourself, you can always give a comment or a review as a way of giving back to the community. I should point out you do need to register, not only to review, but to download from here. Just finally, before I show you the assembly, I know a lot of you buy your hardware bits from SimKit Supplies. It wouldn't be fair, of course, to have you buy a complete kit of parts just to upgrade the throttle in Kit B. So, SKS now have a cheap upgrade kit containing just the extra bits you need. The hydraulic damper, the springs, the new type of tact switch, and you'll need a little extra felt to replace some of the felt that's already there. Just go to simkitsupplies.com. There's a link in the description and it'll take you directly to the upgrade kit. And for those of you who don't have a 3D printer, You can request the printed parts from SimKit Supplies, or why not think about getting your own printer? It's cheaper, and my beginner's guide video, Introduction to 3D Printing, is linked to in the description. So let us get started. These are the new assembly steps. It runs onto 2 pages now, I'm afraid. It's a little bit more complicated. And the first steps are to assemble Maghall 6803Fs. Now, I've said that I've built a lot of this before, so I'm going to use some video from the previous build, and this first one is a very standard assembly of a Maghall. I've done it many times, so you can see on the screen now. I'm just kind of running through in high speed what the assembly of a normal Maghall looks like, and I'll link in the description to the full normal speed version. And in fact, what I'll do over time is I'll create a new video with the assembly of a Maghall and all the tips and hints that I've developed over having done this many times, and that can be the definitive reference for it. But for here, we're just whizzing through. So that's step 1, Maghall number 1 for the mixture lever. There's no change there between that Maghall and the one from the last version. But if you did an even older version, you might notice that at the top of this peg here, you do not have these little grooves, these little sort of notches. If that's the case, then you'd better print out all the parts for this Maghall, because those notches fit into some notches on the mixture lever and then also on the new throttle lever and the new prop lever, so you will need the corresponding peg that's got the notches in it. So that's number 1. Number 2 is exactly the same, apart from the very obvious fact that the cap looks different. It's got this toothed cap. And apart from that, they're just the same. So if you've built this is for the throttle, number 2 for the throttle. So if you've built this already for the throttle, all you need to do is take the 3 screws out, take that little cap off and put this new cap on that's got the tooth top on it, this sort of punk hairdo top. So that's number 2. And then number 3, I've kept the wires on just to save myself some time. This is the same as the mixture one. So the original one, however, you can see that the little ledge here, if I hold the 2 next to each other, is deeper. And that's because the normal Maghall is designed to be sandwiched, to have the levers sandwiched between 2 plates to give them strength and rigidity. It's not designed to be sort of twisting and pivoting on that peg, which is why it's kind of small and not particularly structurally strong. Whereas for the air screw prop lever, there isn't anything sandwiching and holding that lever, so this needs to be a bit stronger, and the screw going into it needs to be a bit deeper, so that's changed. So you'll need a different peg. Apart from that, it's the same, just that little peg bit in the middle. So that's number 3. Okay, number 4, let's build the clinch button. Same as the previous clinch button, there's a slight variation in this version in that there's a little ridge there. And that ridge, it's on both sides, it allows a press fit and it holds the clinch in place inside the body of the throttle handle. So we build this as we've done before. There is a thing called a standoff, a non-clinching standoff, its full name, which is why I call it a clinch button. That drops in there. Hold that with your finger. Then the spring. Then the button cap goes on top. And then you need a M3 countersunk screw, drops in there, and then carefully, you really will find it easy if you're using the correct PH1 screwdriver here, you catch that screw and push the screw through to the standoff and tighten it up. Okay, and there you have a clinch button. Underneath the clinch button goes the tact switch. This is a flat one rather than the one with a post which we had on the previous build, and that drops in like that. If yours looks like this, that's kind of how they normally come. What I normally do is I press out these legs and just flatten them so that they look like that. And now we have a clinch button. Same as before, we have to fit the black and yellow wires. They just go on one side, doesn't matter which way around. As well as being a better button, just a nicer action on it, it's easier to assemble this than the last one. I always found the last button really quite fiddly to assemble, but this goes together more easily. So again, you take the little ferrules, you pop them over. I now tend to fold over the wire so it doesn't fall off. So let's do both of those at once. Use the same black, if you're disassembling the previous one, just use the same black and yellow wires. I didn't need to replace any of the wires, I could take them out and put them in again. And slide get them very flat. Get the legs good and flat, or you find it more difficult to slide these little ferrules over. And then press the ferrule on. Okay, there they are, they're on. And then that slots in like that. And then crush this down. Careful not to shove the screwdriver into your fingers, but just crush this ferrule down into the channel. And now one thing to watch is there's a tendency to sort of press that, sit it on a table and press it down. The problem with that is it will pop as you press the button, and you'll kind of pop out the tack switch. You can sort of do it if you make sure you stop that from happening by keeping your thumb down. So yeah, that kind of works. Then give it a good crush with a screwdriver so that it's not coming off. Okay, I'll just hold that up close, so that should be quite tight, and that the two ferrules are nicely crushed. And then what you can do is put these two legs around the side like that, so it's a nice sort of compact little unit. There we go. So that is on nice and secure. So that's number 5. Okay, let's do number 6. We're going to press this clinch button into the throttle lever, taking care not to press on the button. The point of that is if you press that button, as I said earlier, you'll pop out the tack switch, and that will kind of loosen the wires here. So just do it this way. Hold them like that with the black and yellow wires up, and you can see there's a little gap in the threaded sort of lip around here, and it goes like that with the black and yellow through that gap, and the wires coming out like this, and then push it but not pressing the button. So you can get the first bit okay, and then when you get lower, when it goes in a bit, you'll have to press it like that. And I've kind of done this with a screwdriver just around the sides. Keep going until it should just basically press in and stay in, because of that little ridge I showed you about earlier. Okay, so that's in there. And now we're going to run the black and yellow wires through the throttle lever. It's that same sort of hole as we had on the previous build, and it's, if you haven't done this before, it's that hole down there, and it pops out the side here. Now I've got some exposed wire because this is the same wire I used last time. So if it is the second time for you, just nip a little bit off. You've got spare enough for that, and then run these two wires through the hole here and pop them. Here we go, I can see, here we go, there it is. Once you've got one out, the other will come out easily enough because it'll kind of drag it. So just keep feeding the one through. Okay, and there's the second one just being pulled through. So now carefully pull these wires down, and what you don't want to do, of course, is drag them out of the tack switch. So once you get them like this, you can just pull them down, and you don't need to pull them tight. As soon as they're clear like that, as soon as they're sort of not going to be caught by the cap, then it's fine. You can just leave that little bit of loop in there, and that will be good. So that's number 7. We've run the yellow and the black wires through the throttle lever, and you can see I've made a small amendment here. We'll screw on the cap, that's this, so we'll just fit that on. That should go nice and easily. And then just to finish things off nicely, we just need to put that cap on top, and it just squeezes in, it just grips inside. So that gives you a nice rounded fire button. So now we're up to 8, and we can run these fire button wires through this silicon tube. And I'm just going to show you a little bit of video from last time. I've done this once before, and there is a bit of a trick you can use with a thin guide wire, just because there's a tendency for these two wires to build up a little bit of friction, and you can't just push them all through very easily. This is an interesting step. We need to run these wires inside this tube. Now the tube's plenty big enough, but it tends to be a bit fiddly, it just sticks. So I've developed a little system that involves a little bit of craft wire. And what you need to do is this, just get a piece that's plenty long enough for the tube, fold it over and twist it to make a little loop, a little noose in fact. Then take off a good amount of wire here, twist these together to make one strand, put it through the noose, and then twist that. And just pinch that tight so that that doesn't catch, and then we can thread this through the silicon. The other thing you could probably do is put a little bit of washing up liquid, or just something a little bit greasy inside, and that might make things easier, but this works. And just slide those through. Just, there we go. Looks really easy, doesn't it? Without that, I assure you, it was not easy. So now we don't need this anymore. Now we just need to push this silicon up and push it in the hole here. It does go in, just give it a little twist. You can't really see it go in, but it does. There we go. So that's there. Now we need to thread through this tube. Okay, didn't need anything greasy that time. It just pulls through. Pull it through till it's kind of like that. Almost there with this step. Now we slide on this P-clip. It goes that way so that it is, I guess, away from you. Flat towards you, and then the tube away from you. So that slides on. Little twist to help that go. It's not as snug as the rest, that goes on a little bit easier. Right, that is done for now. Okay, we're moving along here. We're up to step 8. This is the back panel, and that's the back box. And the back panel and the back box go together like that, and we need to do it now because we're going to cover over the screws with some felt in a second. I'm afraid this is a little bit grubby because I've built this already and tested it, and then I had to peel off the felt, and you've got a bit of residue left. Yours will be clean off the printer. So I've made a note here, 10mm screws is what we need. Remember, some of these look very similar, so why don't I just check that I'm using 10mm. It's not actually crucial in this case. Nothing will get damaged, but if you use the wrong one with these mag holes, you can damage something. So a couple of 10mm. Very good. And it goes that way. That's one of them. Okay, that took us up to step 10. Let's talk about felt next, which comes in at step 11. This is how the felt comes. It's a 50mm wide strip and you get a length of it and you cut pieces out of it using templates. And those pieces are used wherever a lever is sliding against a panel. So it provides a little bit of protection and also gives an extra element of friction as well. In the previous design of this throttle quadrant and other quadrants, the cutout was really either roughly by eye, or I provided a thing that you could print on paper and then use that as a sort of cutout. But what I've done now, which is something I introduced with the chassis lever I think, is provided templates with the download. So these are very thin printable parts and they are numbered. You can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's also an arrow so that you can get which way round it is, which orientation it is. The arrow goes left to right. Use each of these, place them over the felt, cut them out, and then you've got the right shaped pieces. The numbering is from back to front. So now that's actually the felt piece from the previous design, and it's still adequate. But that would be number 1. That's at the back. And then number 2 would be on this side of the lever. So if we have the mixture lever at the back, number 2 would be here. There's a separator plate. Number 3 would be in front of that. And then number 4 would be right at the very front, which is on the back of the front panel. So that's the sequence of them all. Just one other thing to show is that one of them, the front one, which is in contact with the throttle, and I kind of wanted the maximum amount of felt contact here, it's actually a little bit bigger than a felt piece, than a 50mm felt piece. So what you can do here is either cut it a little bit short, and you can see here that that number 1 panel doesn't go all the way to the top of the arc. It stops short there, same as the older version. So you can do the same here and have it just stop short of the arc, or you're almost certainly going to have a little sliver of felt left over from elsewhere, so that piece that is short you can make up from somewhere else on the remaining pieces of felt. So that's something a little bit different compared to the previous designs of felt template. I've already got the felt on here from last time. I'm not going to tear it off, but I'll just show you the piece of the video where I apply the felt to the back from last time. It's very simple, not very complicated, but just for completeness, here it is. So let's peel off the back for that. It's not quite so crucial, this one. Actually, more like that. Both screws are covered. Let's move on and do some wiring. So this is the mixture mag hall. It's the plain ordinary mag hall with the lower post in the middle, the lower peg. And the standard wiring, I'm going to whiz through this because again, if you've seen this channel a few times, you've built some of these things, it's the same thing. The wiring is red, blue, white, RBW. I'll do that quickly now. But I will link in the description to a slowed down version and a fuller explanation about how you do this. There it is, red, blue, white, RBW, and no stray strands, so no risk of anything shorting, and they should be nice and snug. And we will fit the mixture mag hall with 6mm screws to the back panel, which is this, and run the wires through the guide tube. So it goes on like that, and then just hold that in place, turn it over and put the 6mm in. These 6mm, by the way, they are the very smallest ones that are M4, and if you use longer, if you put an 8mm in, you will break the mag hall. There's no room for error there, so check you've got the right one. Right, they're in. Now let's run the wires through. I'll run the red through first. It's still got, there we go, that's good. It's still got a big end that's been stripped off because this is the wire that was used in the previous version before I dismantled it, and that went through okay, which is good. Let's see if the next one goes through easily as well. Yeah, that's going through fine. And what I'll do the drag through trick. Once you get a few in there and there's some friction which could get in the way of things, what you can do is put your additional wire, just get it started, and it might not want to go in as well as the others, but you can at this point push another wire in that's already through, so the blue's already through, and I'll push the blue and the white together, and that will help drag it through. So now we've got all three. Let's push those again. So that's the drag through technique. Okay, that's all good. Now let's just carefully pull everything through. We don't want to rip any wires out of the mag hole. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So those are the wires through. Run the wires through the guide tube. In fact, what we can do at this stage is pop them through to the back, because that's where they're going to be going later. Okay, nice and tidy. Right, number 14, fit the mixture lever. Here's the mixture lever. Now, if this is the first time that you've been looking at this, the tension is something we can look at now, the friction, I mean. And the friction of this mixture lever is to a reasonable degree determined by the tightness of these screws. So you can just tweak those a little bit if you like. And yeah, that feels pretty good. Remember, there's additional friction from the felt here that's gripping it, so it's not all down to that cork disc in here. And we want a 6mm again, mixture lever 6mm. Again, it's absolutely crucial that you only use a 6mm. An 8mm would break the mag hole, so use the measuring device if you need to. That's number 14. Now we'll fit the wires to the throttle mag hole. So here it is. I'll do this in high speed. It's the same as before, it's just got the teeth at the top, and again it's red, blue, white, so I'll do this at high speed. Okay, that's good. Red, blue, white, RBW, yeah. And then number 16, we'll fit the wires to the mag hole number 3, the prop. I've done these already. This is what I had from the previous build, and it didn't come apart when I disassembled it. So the only thing to note, of course, it is red, black, green, not red, blue, white. So that's the prop mag hole, and that's the one with the deeper post, the deeper ledge there. Okay, let's fit mag hole number 3, which is the prop one, to the prop back plate, which is this, and it goes that way round with this little lug coming down to the right. Goes like that, and that goes through with 10mm. Yep, 10mm screws this time. Those are relatively long, and they go into these deep chamfered holes. And there's also in the middle a rather messy looking hole, and that gets the 8mm screw, which it's messy because I basically drilled that out. I didn't want to print it again. Yours will be nicely printed with a hole there. That's an 8mm. The purpose of that, incidentally, is to act as a slight magnetic ferrous shield, just because these magnets are getting close to each other and we're trying to prevent crossover between the magnetic fields, and that supposedly provides a little bit of protection. And we need to run the wires through the holes, so that's the rest of step 17. So these are the 3 holes underneath, so let's just pop these wires through. Okay, that's 17 done. Apply felt to the front panel is number 8. Now the front panel, if you remember, is template 4. 1 at the back, 2, 3 in the middle, 4 at the front. It's already on. I've done that. I don't think you need to see me do that. What I will do though is show you that it is template number 4, which goes there. So that's how you cut your felt for it. And if you recall, that's the one that's slightly deeper than 50mm. So it may be that what you have is a 50mm deep piece that maybe comes that far, and then a little extra strip at the bottom that you've cut just to continue to the full depth. Moving on now, here's one of the new things. We're going to fit the damper to the throttle lever. So that's the damper. It goes in like this, and then it is attached with 2 round head 8mm M2, those are M3 actually, M3 round head 8mm screws. So they look like this. So let's have 2 of those in there. We'll also fit the ball plunger to the throttle lever. That's another addition from this new design, and that simply goes in here. Simple as that. Now we're going to fit the throttle lever to the throttle mag hole. It's a slightly different order of things. Normally we can fit the mag hole to the body and then we can fit the lever to it, but because of the toothed engagement here, it's actually rather tricky. You'll see that you can't just plonk that on very easily. So the trick is to assemble it here and then fit the unit to the panel itself. And in order to do it, I need to kind of line up the D's and sort of slide that in and make an engagement with the teeth, and there we go, and now it's in. Just before you did that, by the way, is your chance to check on the friction and just see how tight that friction is. It's extra tight now, of course, or it's extra friction because you've got the hydraulic damping. So that's in there, it's slotted in. Now we can attach the lever to the mag hole with another 6mm. Remember, it's 6mm on these, or you would break the mag hole. So that goes in here. It sinks in below the top. If it's not sinking in, perhaps because when you printed it there was a little lip on here or something, you've got to drive that in until it sinks below the top, or you don't really have much engagement with the mag hole. So that's that done. Okay, 22. Now we're fitting the throttle mag hole, which is essentially the entire throttle lever, to the front panel. And that's the front panel. It's a little bit different from the prior version. There is this recess here which is needed because of that hydraulic damper, and something I've covered up now with the felt. There is a dimple, there's a detent underneath the felt there which that ball spring drops into. So that's the front panel. That attaches as before. It slots in like that, and we hold it down with 6mm, there we go, 6mm countersunk screws. Okay, so that's in nicely. Okay, 23. We thread the wires from the prop back plate, that's these 3 wires, through the front panel holes. Those are these 3 holes here. So the way to do that is turn that over, hold that like that, and probably the easiest thing is if you can just sort of hold things with your fingers like this. Make sure not to cross things over, and in the correct order run those wires through. So the red was on the right, the black's in the middle. Okay, so just before I pull everything together, you can see that there's no crossover here, and I'll just pull those 2 carefully. There it is. You can see that I'm not going to trap anything. There we go. Nice and snug. And then keep those held with your hands. Don't let those fall apart while you do the next step, which is to fit the prop back plate to the front panel with 3 screws, which are 20mm round head, and they go over a limit post, which is the grey thing there. So just pop one of those in by hand for now, and another one of those 20mm over a limit post on the left, and then an 8mm round head in the middle. So just tighten those up, and then that holds this prop back plate securely. And now we're going to run all these wires through that guide tube. So probably what I'll do is see I've still got some stripped wires from this being part of a previous build. I'll get those in first. 2 reds and the black. They should feed through without too much difficulty. Okay, that's fine. In fact, I'll pull those all the way through. And then at some point I'm going to start using the drag through technique. Let's see how long I can get away before I need to start doing that. Some of them will just thread all the way through and you won't have any trouble. Yeah, the black one's there as well. And there we go, we can see the green has been dragged through with a bit of help from the black. And then what I'll do at this stage is I'll see if I can get the white and the blue in at the same time, again with a little help from one of the other wires. So we've got the green partly in, haven't we? So let's see if the green will help pull the white and the blue through. So this, there we go, that's the final one, there's the white. And now let's just pull everything through carefully. Right, they're all in, and we haven't ripped anything out here, and things look good underneath as well. So that's 25, all the prop wires through the guide tube. So now we're applying felt to the separator plate. That's the separator plate. I've already put some felt on, which I actually just did by hand, but I've created templates for you. You can see they're going to be slightly different shapes. You could do it this way yourself if you like. Get it the right way round. You can see here, if you look at it end on, that there's one flat side and there's one with a step, and the flat is to the back, so it goes on that way, which means that's the back, so that would be template 2 and that would be template 3. So you can use that if you like to create the shape for the felt and then stick those on. So this is where a few things come together now. We're going to thread the wires from the front panel through the back panel tube, which is this. So all of those wires go through here. Do that one at a time or as a whole bunch if you can manage it. Okay, there they are, they're all popping out. Right, just leave that sat like that for now. Fit the silicone tube into the back panel and run the wires through. So if you visualize this closing up like that, the silicone tube is going to go into that back panel. These wires are going to run through, so let's get the wires through first actually. And then get that silicone wire into this little cavity. Okay, I think that's held quite well. And then thread the mixture wires, well we did that earlier actually, didn't we? And the bond wires through the back panel hole B, that's this hole, so it's just these yellow and black wires that need to go through this hole now. Okay, so there they come. Let's look at things again from this side. Get the last of that yellow wire through. There it is, and the black one. Yeah, it's nice and tidy. Now the separator plate. Remember I said that there's a front and a back, so it sits that way with the ledge to the front. So that sits over here. Sits on top like that. And now we put the two together, which involves a little process of pulling these wires, the big set of 6 wires, pulling those together as we push everything together. And you can have a look at the side. nothing should be trapping there. And there are some lugs at the top which slot in like this. Okay, I think we're there. Have a good look. And now we use 6 screws, and these are nice long 30mm Phillips head screws. So let's get those in. I'm going to do this one up here last because that's going to hold the P. And I'll get those tightened up now. Okay. Okay, I said 6 screws. We've got these 4 round head Phillips up here, and then there's just a couple in here. They are 14mm countersunk screws. So let's get those in. Almost finished now. Step 32, which is the air screw prop knob, which is that, to the lever. And I'll put a link in the description as to how I did that white lettering. It's the technique with white silicone, kind of bathroom sealant stuff. And that goes in quite easily actually. It's only a very fine recess that I made, but it worked pretty well. So anyway, the knob goes on like this with the screw hole to the back so you don't see it. Goes on like that, and then we put a 10mm countersunk in there. And then we fit that to the pitch disc, which is this, and that goes on like that. So that's the same as before, by the way. This is the same, that's the same, and that's the same. So if you've printed these already, you don't need to do it again, and it's 6mm. Okay, that's good. Number 33, now this has changed. This friction disc here, the recess in here is deeper because the peg recess is deeper, so that gives you more strength, and you're putting a longer screw in. That used to be an 8mm, I believe, and it's a 10mm now, so that's a bit more strength you've got in there. And then there's this extra clearance here. This is printed that way round, so this is bridging. This these lines here, they're all bridged across, and you get a little bit of a sag. And I was just finding that when I sat that on here and rotated it occasionally, some of that bridging was just sort of sinking a bit, and it would just catch and scuff. So I just given a little bit more clearance there. That's the main thing there. So what do we do here? We fit the prop lever to the spacer and the friction disc. So we've got that, we've got that, and we've got that. And those are the same 14mm as before. The trick is that it needs to be with the flat sort of D shape at the top, like that. So that, keep that the right way when you fit this to here. Okay, so D at the top, and then fit that there. And once you've got one in, the rest are easy. Okay, and then we fit the whole thing to the mag hole like this, there it is, and that is now, as I said, a 10mm screw in the middle. Much more purchase there, that feels stronger, definitely. Nice smooth action there, and no sort of scuffing. Okay, we're up to 34, the left and the right lugs. These are kind of symmetrical. Occasionally I find they're going better one way than another, but there's a little bit of a ridge, and that ridge drops over the edge there so it won't slide. And you fit those with 8mm. 8mm round-headed screws. Okay. And now we're up to the wiring. Okay, here's the wiring diagram, same as last time. Just one thing to point out, that I haven't mentioned wire length throughout any of the assembly. But the wire lengths are all here. So whenever there's been a reference to a red wire coming through from a particular mag hole, you can look at this diagram and get the lengths. Secondly, you've seen that a number of these wires are already stripped. That's because I built this before and I've disassembled it for this new version. But generally speaking, at this stage now, you're going to be stripping off, just to show how this is done, by the way, you're just going to be stripping off with your fingers just a tiny bit of silicon, because we're going to be crimping the wire into these RJ45s. Now, for those of you who say you don't need to strip it and you can just put the wire in and it will just bite with the small teeth, which you can see in there, yes, it should, and most of the time it will, but I have found situations where it doesn't, either because it just didn't and we just got unlucky, or there's times when you've played around with these wires and some of the wire is actually slipped inside this insulation. So the very end of the wire, you might think there's wire right to the tip of the silicon, but it could be just back a few mil, and then you put it in here and there's no wire actually inside the silicon at the point that it bites. So that's why I always strip back the wire before I pop it in here. And I strip back a very small amount, just that. I mean, that's about the maximum you want to do. What's that, about sort of 5 mil, maybe 4 mil, because it's possible when you pop these wires in here and you slide them over the teeth where you want the contact to be made, that there is an adjacent channel with an adjacent teeth, and I don't know if you can see there, but some of the metalwork of that teeth comes through to the channel next to it. So if you've got a long scruffy bit of wire that has got some fray strands of wire on it, it looks very possible to me that you can have that going contact not just in the channel you want, but on the one next to it. So twist those tightly and keep them short. That's the tip there. Okay, there are two clusters of wires now coming through the back. We've got, on the right hand side, we've got all the B wires, as you can see there from the diagram, and then a cluster of wires on the left. These are the A wires. And there are also a couple of posts going in, junction posts, and that's the black and the red there. And these are M4 flange headed screws. So let's just get those started. And what we're doing here is we're joining all the red wires on the right hand side and all the black wires on the left hand side. And the way we do that is some of these wires are not stripped back by just 4 mil, some of them are stripped back by a good amount, and you can see that all the red ones are like that, and if yours aren't like that, which they probably won't be, do that now, and then have another piece, and again the length of that isn't on here, but it's that sort of length, it's not much, it's only going a short distance, and strip a good amount of that back with a tiny bit on the end. So you've got 4 wires now, 4 reds, and they get a good twist like this, and then make a little shepherd's crook out of them round your screwdriver, and then slide them with a kind of clockwise rotation around that right hand post, and then nip them down like that. Okay, so that's all the reds done. Same for the black. We've got a good amount of black here, and we've got another black from the B side of things, and we have an extra piece of black on its own, and now we've got 3 blacks. Give those a good twist, and another little shepherd's crook thing. Slide that around the left hand post and nip that up underneath, so the wires are held by that flange. It's not the prettiest, but it's not going anywhere. Okay, now let's get these wired up. This is the way to do this. We can see from here that, hold it like that, yep. Red on the very left. So there's only 1 red now. They've all been joined, and we pop that wire in there. Just sort of sit it in the channel. I do these one at a time. I mean, you could do them all at once, but One at a time works best for me, and then I crimp it and crush it, and I just look that the wire has been nicely crimped between the teeth in that channel. So that's red, that's done. Now next is blue. There's two blues of course, but this is blue from the right hand side, the B's. So that will be this one. So that goes in here. That's a very small amount. Maybe that's a bit too small. Oh no, I'll pull that through. That's okay. Let's get that one in there. Yeah, that'll be fine. You can see it's been caught by the wire. Yep, that's good. Next is the blue from the left. Next is the black. Looks good. Next is the white from the right. Give these a good twist if they ever look frayed. It just reduces your chances of problems later. Yeah, that's good. White from the left. It's a bit scruffy. Tidy that up. That's slightly longer than I'd like, really. I'll just take a little off. That's a good length. So yeah, I'd say 4mm. Okay, white from the left. Green. There's only one green. Yeah, that's good. And then there's just the yellow. Now that's a longish piece, probably a bit too long. Oh, now I don't want those bits in there because they dropped down the back of this RJ45, and people have had problems with this, but they've just had some strands, little strands in here. Give this a tap, and if you're concerned about things not working, one option, to take all the wires out, give this a really good tap and shake out any bits and pieces. Okay, last one then, yellow. Didn't do that properly. Let's try it again. Yeah, that's crushed nicely. Okay, now let's hold that plate down for the last time, that little hinge, and pop this in and press it in, and then just push all these wires out of the way. I guess you could test at this point, because once we put the lid on and then we put the Visa mount on top of that, then it's not so easy to go and have another look. So yes, I would say now's a good time to test it. But I'm not going to do that. I am just going to finish building this for you. So that kind of goes on two ways. The way it goes, that's the wrong way. If you just follow the line at the top there, you can see it doesn't look as good as it does like that. It's continuation. So we do that, and then we have to make sure that these wires are not being trapped anywhere. No, don't see any trapped wires there. And then there are two types of screws here. Let's go back to our list. We've got the back, this is the back box lid. We've got 20 mils at the top, no, 20 mils at the bottom, sorry, and 14 at the top. So, because the bottom ones go all the way through to the back of the box. And then that is number 36 done. And then finally, it's the Visa dovetail, and it goes this way up with the gap at the bottom. And we use 8 mils for that, 4 8 mils. So just let's get those in. So let's finish these off now. 4 8 mils. And That, my friends, is a Spitfire Mark 9 throttle quadrant version 3 with a good smooth action on the air screw, and that should be stronger and more stable now. And we have that great nice click, nice resistance bomb release, and then that really nice action as you power up the engine. Very nice. Now, I made you a small promise at the start, didn't I? That I'd give you a sneak preview of something. Well, this monster is 1/3. Actually, it's more than a third, but it's not far off a third of the Mustang P51 pedestal. We have a working landing gear. You can hear the click of that. And there is little work needed, obviously, just to finish that off. And then the locking mechanism that holds it in its 2 up or down positions. We have the elevator trim working very nicely. And the rudder trim and the aileron trim. I was doing a little testing on a different white lettering technique here, but I still prefer the silicon approach, so that's what's going on here. They've got a really nice action to them. So that's all in place, and the extra 2/3 are a little piece at the back, which is sort of cosmetic, and then the important one is a chunk that's not far off as big as that at the front, which has got the flap lever in. And the flap lever's got 7 positions, so I'm having to design a new component there that will give me 7 clicks over a range of only 45 degrees. So that's what's in progress at the moment. But otherwise, this is really coming along, and that will be the first P51 released Authentic-It product, hopefully in the next few weeks. Okay, that's all for now, folks. Remember, subscribe if you want to find out more about this. There won't be too much more Spitfire stuff coming out of the Spitfire factory, the Authentic-It Spitfire factory, over the next few weeks, but we will be seeing more P51, and you will be hearing more about the Mosquito Fighter Bomber version 6. Bye for now.